Good evening and welcome to the April 12th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting. Please be advised that FATV is conducting the audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. I ask that anyone in the audience who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves for the record now by standing and stating their name and address. Seeing none, I ask that all electronic devices be placed into silent mode. The public has been advised to contact the City Clerk's office regarding any comments of no more than 2 minutes. There was one written comment submitted to the council that'll be placed on file with the meeting minutes. I invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to please approach the podium, identify yourself by name and city of residence, and identify the agenda item on which you would like to speak, and then you may speak on it for no more than 2 minutes. Anyone other than those presenting would like to speak? Yes.
Hi, Miranda Toja-Robbins, Fitchburg resident, Highland Ave. I'm speaking on agenda item for the Longs Joe School. I want to say it's 88-. I just only have a question. So the 1.4 million is on top of the 5 million that was already supposed to be allocated for doors and windows? And that's my question. Thank you.
Any other comment by the public? Seeing none, we move on to the agenda. 8723, in order that the City of Fitchburg approves the expenditure of funds from the National Council on Aging grant in the approximate amount of $149,848.73 for the purpose of said grant, which is to increase COVID-19 vaccination rates in MPHN communities and to ensure older adults and people with disabilities get the latest COVID and flu vaccines. I have a letter here from Director Curry dated March 27th. Please be advised that I am submitting this order to be directed to the City Council to approve the expenditure of the National Council on Aging Community Action Grant for the period commencing April 1st, 2023 through March 31st, 2024. These funds were awarded to the Fitchburg Health Department, lead agency of the Montechusett Public Health Network, for the purposes of increasing COVID-19 and flu vaccination rates in the MPHN communities and to ensure older adults and people with disabilities get the latest COVID and flu vaccines. These funds allow the Communicable Disease Investigation Team, formerly known as the COVID Response Team, to target vaccination efforts to the most vulnerable populations. This grant will require hosting of 80 vaccine clinics, establish 10 new partnerships in places such as places of worship, senior centers, and apartment buildings via newly established community outreach. The grant also requires the team to establish 3 new relationships with healthcare providers, and while providing a robust in-home vaccination request referral system to administering no less than 1,001 vaccinations. And before I open it up to the floor, have anyone here wishing to speak on this in Mr. Curry's absence? Just wanted to state for the record, as I always do, that attendees this evening for the committee are myself, Councilor DiNatale, Councilors Boschman, Van Hazinger, Zarella, and Squalia. And with that, I turn it over.
Thank you, Councilor DiNatale. I appreciate that. I think I have nothing to add, but happy to answer any questions that
Would you state your name and occupation for the public record?
I'm sorry about that. My name is Victoria Seltzer. I'm the epidemiologist from the Fitchburg Health Department.
Councilor Squalia?
Thank you. Victoria. So we have $150,000 grant for a minimum of 80 vaccine clinics that we have to host over what period of time?
It's about a year.
About a year. And we have these 1,001 vaccinations minimum. Mm-hmm. Is that including the 80 vaccine clinics, or is that all in-home vaccination?
That is including distributed at the 80 vaccine clinics.
And the $150,000 grant for this purpose, is that all the money that we need to administer the 80 vaccine clinics and the 1,001 at-home services, or is there a matching portion? Do we need to also come up with additional funds?
No, all of the activities that are proposed in this grant proposal will be supported by these funds, and no additional funds from the city or elsewhere will be needed to fulfill those activities.
And what is the time period for the year of the
So the year technically, based on the grant terms, begins April 1st of 2023 and then ends 1 year later, March 31st, 2024.
Okay, thank you.
Council Boschman?
My question to you, Gloria, this is not just for Fitchburg, right, that 150,000?
That is correct. It's for Fitchburg and the 12 other communities that are part of the MPHN, which includes our neighboring cities of Leominster and Gardner, and then also 10 other towns in the region.
So basically, that 150, the only reason why I'm asking that, because I received the email probably from everybody else, got the email, and they all think that $150,000 is coming just to Fitchburg. So it's not. So it's going to be equally divided between the other communities?
So it's correct that it is for all 13 communities, though I would say it's not necessarily equally divided just because of differences in population size and needs. For example, one of the communities we have in the MPHN is Phillipson, which is quite small and has much lesser needs than a community like Fitchburg.
And how's the turnout? Are people more acceptable now with COVID shots and everything else, or is still a lot of fighting it?
Yeah, that's definitely a really good question. I think that the events we host, the public are really receptive to. I think that folks are really appreciating the opportunity to be able to access the immunizations in the place that are most comfortable for them. For example, we're able to go, right into the housing authority buildings, right into the private senior housing buildings, right into the senior center where people are spending time on a daily basis. So that way we can make sure we're tackling issues that people might face to accessing immunizations, such as transportation, such as mobility, such as scheduling an appointment online at CVS. So that way, if someone chooses to be immunized, whether it be with a flu vaccine or a COVID vaccine or both, that they are able to do so easily in the community.
And underneath this grant, is it going to fall underneath the same kind of guidelines that you had before? You go down and get your flu shot, you get X amount of money back. If you go down and get the COVID shot, you get $75 back. Is that going to be the same kind of project?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So that program that you're talking about, the incentives program that has been running in the city for the past several months, was run by the State Department of Public Health. Those incentives were provided by the state, and that program is run by the state. So specifically, the $75 gift card program has ended. It ended at the end of March. There is still a $25 gift card program running. Whether or not the state will choose to continue that program, I do not know. I don't have an end date currently. It may be at the end of the month. It may be at the end of the year, but we don't have that information as of right now.
Okay. I guess that'll be it, Mr. Chair.
Move to approve 8723.
Second.
Motion made to approve 8723. I will take a vote on this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? One in opposition. Passes 4-1. Thank you. I was in opposition. Next on the agenda, 8823. Order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $1,400,000 same to be charged against available funds and credited to Longstreth School Windows and Doors Capital Project. A letter here from Auditor Brooks to the mayor. This project is to replace the windows and doors at the school over the summer and is primarily funded by the Massachusetts School Building Authority Accelerated Repair Program. The city's share of $1.4 million was initially to be funded from borrowed funds. Rather than issue bonds for payment over 4 years, I recommend that the city's share be funded from available funds. Mr. Brooks, from my own recollection, the total value of the project was $4.1 million?
4.8.
$4.8 million, of which 1.4 would be our share.
Correct.
And initially, we were going to likely bond this out, but your recommendation to the mayor, and he's apparently agreed with you with this submission, is to not borrow our portion for this project, but to just pay for it now
Correct.
out of free
Correct.
cash.
And that was part of when we did have the discussion about the Crocker School and the library projects, and I presented the pink sheet for borrowing and future payments. The assumption was that this would be paid out of free cash.
That's right, okay. Council Boschman.
Two things. I want to say thank you to Kelvin Brooks. I agree 100%. I'm glad we're not going to be taking more money and borrowing when we have the free cash. And the other thing, I'm just hoping, Mr. Chair, that they buy good windows, that in 5 years or 10 years, you go and look at the school and the windows are bowing. I'm just hoping they don't buy those kind of windows. So that's all I'm asking. And they do happen, because I can tell you about a house that I see the windows are bowling. All right? So anyway, that's it. I make a motion, we accept.
Second.
Motion made, seconded to accept. I believe it's a wise move on the city's part. I appreciate the suggestion from Mr. Brooks, and ultimately the mayor's the person who makes the call on this, and I'm happy to see that he would prefer to go this route than add more to our debt service. So with that said, motion made and seconded. If there are no objections, I will take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, it's unanimous. 08923, order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $400,000 to be charged against available funds and credited to DPW admin expenses, stormwater contract services. Mr. Erickson, if you'd want to proceed. I mean, it's a long letter. I mean, however you want to present. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor. I'll paraphrase if you don't mind. For the record, Nicholas Erickson, Commissioner of Public Works for the City of Fitchburg. I'm before you this evening to request an appropriation from available funds of $400,000 to comply with our Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permit, also known as our MS4 permit from the U.S. EPA. So this permit sets out discharge standards and a bunch of reporting requirements that the city has to follow, including outfall inspection, sampling, et cetera. So this $400,000 is used for the purposes of compliance with that permit. If we don't comply with the permit, then we face fines from the EPA and we fall out of compliance. We also use a very small portion of this $400,000 on an annual basis as cash match for grant opportunities that come up throughout the entire year. We've been successful in securing grants to handle stormwater issues in the John Fitch Highway area and others throughout the city. And we also use a small portion of these funds to help address minor stormwater system repairs that come up throughout the year. So catch basin reconstruction, culvert replacement, et cetera. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
This is the annual recurring free cash appropriation to supplement what's existing in the budget for stormwater maintenance.
Correct. So every year we perform an inventory and cost analysis of what we think it's going to cost to comply with the permit. Each year it ends up at about $400,000. We ask for inclusion in the annual fiscal budget. Because of various other costs, we can't keep it in there. It gets cut every year. So this is a way to maintain compliance with the permit, but not have it built into the annual budget. So at some point, we'll need to come up with a more sustainable funding source for this, whether it's a fee or a charge. But right now, we don't want to put the citizens of Fitchburg through that. We don't want to give them another fee or charge to deal with.
Well, I just want to make a clarifying comment, and it's not semantics. It's not cut. It was never in there to begin with. I mean, what we submit for requests as departments, if you don't get what you submit, but it wasn't there previously, it's not a cut in spending.
Right.
The reason why it's not given is, I think the number is more along the line of $1.5 million.
$1.6 million.
It's 1.6, yep. And every year we hire interns, we go after grants, and all that kind of reduces the total bottom line cost of the city, and we can get by with that $400,000.
So basically the entire amount, what's in there as a minimum? I think it was like 180,000. Aren't there line items in your budget that like 50K, or is there nothing in there?
For stormwater specifically, there are some other very small line items that do get funded on an annual basis. So we belong to a stormwater coalition. It's a $4,000 annual.
Okay, so that's not
dues. There's EPA contract services, which this $400,000 goes towards, and there's a few other very small line items for supplies and labor.
And so for the public to understand why this avenue is taken, is that there isn't $1.6 million lying around in the budget to reduce to fund this account. So the avenue the mayor has taken thus far is the free cash route at the bare minimum. Again, understanding the fact that to give $1.6 million every year in free cash is a really hard ask to do, considering we just allocated $1.4 million for the Longjoe Middle School windows and door replacement. But that would be what would be required if this were not to come through free cash, is there'd have to be $1.6 million in cuts from the current spending plan to reallocate. And, you know, this council has difficulty coming up with $50,000, let alone $1.6 million.
Right, and that would take away from other capital projects. I mean, the Longjoe School window and door replacement is a good example of that.
How many actual storm drains do we service with this $400,000? I'm not talking design, like physical boots on the ground, actually doing the maintenance work.
So 7,000 catch basins throughout the city, so this helps fund maintenance of all those. Obviously, we can't handle all of it because it's a pretty tall task to handle all 7,000 catch basins. But
And so what would the $1.6 million actually accomplish if this doesn't service all 7,000? It's to cover any.
Right.
I'm assuming there are catch basins every year you guys have highlighted for repair or restoration.
Right.
The ones that are sunk.
We try to tackle the worst throughout the city on any given construction season. That $1.6 million would allow us to develop a more robust asset management program for the stormwater system. And we'd be able to tackle more of it on an annual basis, essentially. And that's between identifying the catch basins that need to be repaired and then performing the actual repairs, replacing drain pipes, rehabilitating culverts, all that stuff.
And when did this mandate come forward?
It was effective as of 2016. And then it was administratively continued for a year, so it didn't really hit the streets and become effective until 2017.
And this was brought forth by the eggheads in D.C., otherwise known as the EPA.
Regulated under the EPA.
They're very good at forcing communities to spend money it doesn't have.
That's true.
It's not coming out of their pocket.
And unfortunately, Massachusetts is one of the few states within the country that's still not delegated, meaning that the MS4 permit falls under jurisdiction of the EPA instead of a local DEP. So other states, this type of activity is regulated through the state DEP.
I mean, I don't have an issue with the regs and that the fact that it has to be done. It has to be done. What I have an issue with is how they snap their finger one day when they wake up out of bed one day and go, hey, you know what? Fitchburg, here's a bill for $1.6 million. Have a good day. You know? No consideration for the residents in this city in terms of what they can afford and what they can't afford. So just a long-standing gripe with me with that agency. Loves to force us to spend money, and they don't have any idea how we're going to spend it because they don't care. So.
We do our best to go after grants to try to minimize the impact to our bottom line. Like John Fitch Highway is a great example of that. We were able to go and get a grant to complete a 25% design of stormwater improvements for the John Fitch Highway area that floods out between Summer Street and Lunenburg Street. And right now we're working on the final design, and hopefully that project will be funded for construction through the Mass DOT's Transportation Improvement Program.
Councilor Squalia?
Thank you. So the 400,000 that's the minimum we have to spend per the EPA. And I remember a few years ago, 2017, 2018, Councilor Boschman especially was talking about what other funding sources are we looking at. You know, you had mentioned that earlier. So can we use some of this 400,000 to, I don't know, pay for a consultant to look into a strategy for different funding sources? Have we taken that on yet?
We have done that. We were actually in the process of moving forward with that right around March 2020. And if you recall, that's when the world kind of shut down. And because of the climate that precipitated from that, we haven't moved forward with looking into that any further. And that would consist of essentially a user fee for the stormwater system. A lot of other cities and towns across the Commonwealth have a stormwater charge for their citizens. So we looked at that, what the revenue requirements would be, what the rates would need to be. There's a few different ways to structure it to make sure that it's equitable across the entire city and doesn't hit a particular group more than others. So there's certainly a lot of options there. We've got that study done in draft form. We just haven't really acted on it yet. And that is something that we'll need to consider in the future.
Do we have approximate timeline of when we're thinking about attacking that issue?
I don't as of right now. It's a decision that's a little bit beyond my control. I mean, I can work with the mayor's office and see if there's an appetite for that. Right now, just because of everything that's going on, there's cost increases with fuel and labor and across the board. I think an additional fee for citizens is going to be tough to swallow. So that's kind of where we're at with it.
But we're paying for it anyway, so it just depends where it's coming from, I guess, or what else we're not funding. But yes. Okay, thank you.
Council Bushman?
Are we, on that $400,000, when you first came in front of us, you said you would hire part-time employees to, are you going to still do that this year? To
Yep.
do catch basin work?
Yes, we have a rec out for summer interns. There'll be engineering interns that assist with a lot of the permit requirements as far as going out and visiting the catch basins and doing some field work and all that. We're hiring for summer help for the streets division. I don't know if they'll necessarily be tasked with working on the stormwater stuff. A lot of times that requires, hydraulic licenses, CDLs, all that stuff to do the construction end of things. But we are interested in hiring summer interns for the engineering division. So if you have any candidates, send them our way.
Is the pay good?
Depends on your perspective.
All right. I would ask another question. He's absolutely right, because I was a pro advocate. But for communities, for us to do it, we have to charge the residents of Fitchburg. And a lot of people, right now, I won't even vote for it right now because we get a couple more minutes and we're going to have these guys in front of us for water rates and sewer rates. So.
And one more thought on that, with the water and sewer rates, we'll get into it during the next meeting, but there's some pretty dire situations there. And I would hate to burden the ratepayers with another fee and cause water and sewer to miss out on the rate increases that are required to provide drinking water and sanitary sewer to the citizens of Fitchburg. Those are unfortunately a higher priority than stormwater at this point.
I agree. I make a motion we accept.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Just on that, I will say that the residents are already paying for this maintenance through free cash. That's their tax money. It's just excess tax money above what our budget calls for every year. So given that, it's kind of like snow and ice removal. And this is a suggestion for the auditor, the current deputy auditor, and the mayor, who, for future budgets, what the city decided to do years ago was say, well, the recurring expenses we incur on snow and ice removal, there's always going to be snowstorms in this city. It's a guarantee. And so technically it's a recurring expense. We put in $400,000 or $500,000 in the budget, and then we would use the balance out of free cash. And then a few years ago, the policy changed where we would take existing free cash already certified and set aside $675,000 of that into the budget under the revenue line item, so that there is like a reserve account for snow and ice, not having to use the free cash in the future. It was guaranteed to, no surprises. We set the money there out. We baked it into the budget. I see this as a similar item to enact that policy on. We know we have stormwater maintenance needs. We know there is a minimum requirement put on us by the feds. We have 7,000 storm drains. There's always going to be a need for using this money like snow and ice. Since the mayor has allocated this $400,000 out of free cash now for, I believe this is 6 years now, this is almost, if you will, it is a recurring expense that should go in the budget. Should not be funded through this mechanism that we do right now. What should be done is, in addition to that $675,000 for snow and ice, there should be another reserve account put in there from already certified free cash of $400,000 for the stormwater maintenance. Yes, that means less free cash after certification, but we're already using the free cash. So it's a moot point. So considering that we have snow and ice needs and this every single year, no question about it, there is no ifs, it's just a reality. I think the city should entertain that for that account as well. Stop with these annual appropriation requests through free cash. Just put the certified free cash of $400,000 in the budget right below snow and ice and call it a day so we don't have to do this every year. It's a guarantee it's going to come out of here, so just do it. That's my opinion. I would probably say the same thing for stabilization and OPEB. Anything that we do free cash recurringly every year, no exceptions, just do it, because we're just delaying the inevitable. It's my opinion. I have a motion made and seconded to approve 8923. If there are no objections, I will take this on unanimous consent. Seeing none, it is approved.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. If there are no objections, we are adjourned. Thank you.